All right, so you're thinking about crypto, maybe looking to trade, and bam, you hit this wall of different platforms, right? So many names, interfaces. It's kind of confusing.
It really is. How do you even know where to start? Or, what's actually happening when you click buy or sell?
Exactly. It feels like you need a guide just to figure out the landscape.
Definitely. And things have evolved quite a bit from the early days. There's a lot more out there now than just the initial places people went.
For sure. So, using the sources you sent over, that's what we're going to unpack today. We're doing a deep dive to get under the hood, understand the real differences between the main types of crypto exchanges, especially in that decentralized space.
Yeah. Looking at how they work fundamentally.
And crucially, what those mechanics mean for you, whether you're trading actively or maybe just crypto curious and trying to make sense of it all.
The aim is really to equip you with that knowledge. So you get the trade-offs, the different flavors of these platforms.
Okay, so let's start where a lot of people probably did or still do. Centralized exchanges, CEXs.
Right. Source 2 talks about these. Basically, they're businesses, often regulated ones, that act like middlemen, kind of like a traditional stock exchange, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense. They hold your crypto for you.
Mm-hmm. They manage accounts, they connect buyers and sellers, but it's within their own system. Source 2 points out they're owned by a single company and match orders between their customers. And they're usually the main way to swap, regular money for crypto.
They definitely made things easier, no doubt. Much simpler than trying to find someone directly back in the day. But Source 2 also brings up a big, kind of scary point.
Yeah, the risk factor. Even though they're often regulated and seem solid, CEXs aren't immune to hacks or fraud. Source 2 mentions FTX, which is, well, a very stark reminder.
Oof, yeah. A reminder that even the big ones can go down and user funds can be lost because fundamentally you're trusting that company.
Exactly, you're handing over custody, and that trust issue is really what spurred the growth of the alternative. Decentralized exchanges, or DXs. Source 1 draws a clear contrast here.
So DXs are the opposite.
Pretty much. Built on decentralization. Source 1 emphasizes peer-to-peer trading directly on the blockchain. No central company holding your funds or controlling the trades. You keep your private keys.
Meaning you keep control of your assets, always.
That's the core idea. The trust isn't in a company, it's more in the code. Source 2 calls them trustless environments. They run on smart contracts.
Code on the blockchain that just executes trades automatically if the rules are met. No human needed.
Exactly. No intermediary stepping in.
Okay, so DEXs promise that user control, less counterparty risk. But how do they actually work without a central order matcher? Source 1 seems to break DEXs down into two main types.
Yeah, two main models. Automated market makers, AMMs, and order book-based DEXs. And they approach liquidity and trading quite differently.
Let's tackle AMMs first. Source 1 suggests they're quite different from what traditional finance folks might expect.
Totally different. AMMs, as Source 1 explains, ditch the traditional order book. No lists of buy and sell orders at specific prices. Instead, they use smart contracts to manage something called liquidity pools.
Liquidity pools, like a big pot of tokens.
Sort of, yeah. A shared reserve. Users called liquidity providers, or LPs, deposit pairs of tokens into this pool. Say some Ether and an equivalent value of a stablecoin.
Okay, so if I want to swap my Ether for that stablecoin, I'm not looking for Bob who wants to sell it. I just interact with the pool.
Exactly. You trade against the pool.
Hmm?
The price isn't set by bids and asks. It's set by a math formula, an algorithm, based on how many of each token are in the pool right now. Source 1 mentions the classic Uniswap V1 example, X times Y equals K.
Where X and Y are the amounts of the two tokens, and K is some constant number the formula tries to keep stable.
Right, so when you trade, you add one token, remove the other, changing the ratio. The algorithm automatically shifts the price to maintain that K value.
Interesting. And the people who put the tokens in the pool, the LPs, what's in it for them?
Fees. Source 1 notes they earn a cut of the trading fees from every swap that uses their pool. That's the incentive to provide the liquidity that makes the swaps possible.
Makes sense. And Source 1 uses Uniswap to show how these AMs have changed over time.
Yeah, it's a great case study. V1 was that basic XIK concept. V2 improved things, allowed more token pairs, brought in price oracles.
Price oracles, like getting real-world price data?
Kind of, yeah, getting better price feeds from outside the pool itself, making the pool's price less isolated and potentially more accurate.
And then V3 brought in concentrated liquidity. Sounds important.
It was a big deal. Source 1 explains that in V1, V2, your deposited liquidity was spread thin across all possible prices. Very inefficient. V3 lets LPs choose a specific price range to put their capital in.
Why would you do that?
Better capital efficiency, according to Source 1. If you think Ethos DC is going to trade between, say, $3,000 and $3,500, you put your liquidity there. Your capital isn't sitting idle covering prices way outside the current action. It earns more fees from the actual trades happening.
Okay. And Source One also says this helps with impermanent loss. I hear that term a lot. Quick breakdown.
Yeah, it's a major risk for LPs. Basically, if the prices of the two tokens you deposited change a lot relative to each other after you put them in the pool, the AMM automatically rebalances your share. If you pull your funds out, then the total value might be less than if you just held the original tokens in your wallet.
Even with the fees you earned.
Potentially, yeah. It's impermanent because if prices go back to the original ratio, the loss disappears on paper. But if you withdraw before that, it's a real potential downside.
Okay, so V3's concentrated liquidity tries to mitigate that by letting LPs focus their capital, maybe reducing how much the ratio shifts. And V3 added fee tiers, too.
Right. Source 1 mentions that. Lets LPs choose fees based on the pair's volatility, perhaps.
And Source One even looks ahead to Uniswap V4 ideas, hooks for customization, dynamic fees, maybe even on-chain limit orders, which is wild for an AMM, and a singleton contract for better efficiency.
Shows they're constantly trying to improve, add features. But Source 1 still flags those core AMM traits. Great for simple swaps, easy to use, but slippage can be an issue, especially for big trades or if a pool isn't very deep.
Slippage where the price moves against you during your trade because your trade is large relative to the pool.
Precisely. And that impermanent loss risk is always there for LPs.
Got it. Okay, that covers AMMs. Let's switch gears to the other main DX type, order book DXs. Source One says these feel more traditional.
They do, yeah. Because they use the same basic setup as traditional stock exchanges, or CEXs. Both Source 1 and 2 mention this. They use a record of buy and sell orders. People explicitly state the price they want to buy or sell at and the quantity.
So this is where I'm trying to find another person's order to match with, not trading against a pool.
Exactly. Source 1 explains it. You place a buy order, the system looks for a matching sell order at that price or better. If it finds one, boom, trade executed.
And Source One mentions the CLO model, Central Limit Order Book.
Yes, that's the standard term used widely in finance. The CLO up, as Source 1 notes, just displays that list all the open buy orders, bids, and sell orders, asks, with their prices and amounts. The key thing for DKEX is that the final trades usually get recorded on the public blockchain ledger for transparency.
Now, Source One draws a really important line with an order book DEX, on-chain versus off-chain. What's the difference there?
It's huge. Impacts everything from speed to decentralization. An on-chain order book DEX, Source 1 explains, does everything on the blockchain. Placing an order, canceling, the trade itself, every step is a blockchain transaction.
Wow, that sounds super transparent, fully decentralized.
It is. That's the big pro,
Yeah.
Source 1 points out. But the downside, speed and cost. Every action needs network validation, pays gas fees. It can be slower and more expensive, especially during busy network times.
Okay, so what about off-chain then?
Source 1 says these take the order book itself and the engine that matches the orders off the main blockchain. They run it on a separate, faster layer. Only the final executed trade gets settled back onto the main chain.
So that makes it faster and cheaper.
Much faster, much cheaper gas-wise, according to Source 1. Better for frequent trading. But there's a potential trade-off. That off-chain part might be run by a specific entity. So Source 1 flags a potential centralization risk there. It's not as purely decentralized as the on-chain version.
Right, a potential point of control. And for order book DXs in general, Source One mentions slippage can still happen, but for a different reason than AMMs.
Yeah. Here, slippage isn't about impacting a pool's ratio. It's about the depth of the order book. If you place a big market buy order and there aren't enough sell orders at the best price, your order slips down the book, filling at worse and worse prices until it's complete. Source 1 says this is common in less liquid markets.
Okay, so weighing the two. Source One paints a picture. AMMs are simple for swaps, pool-based, risk-IL, and pool-related slippage. Order books feel familiar, use explicit orders, risk slippage based on book depth, and have that on-chain, off-chain trade-off for decentralization versus performance.
And Source 1 is clear. Which one is better? Really depends on what you need. Are you prioritizing pure decentralization? Speed. Low fees. Do you need complex order types like limit orders? That guides your choice.
It definitely sounds like pros and cons for each, which naturally makes you think, can you combine them? Source One mentions hybrid DDEX is doing just that.
Yeah, innovation often means trying to get the best of both worlds. Source 1 points to Kyber Network as an example.
How does Kyber blend things?
Well, Source 1 explains Kyber uses liquidity reserves, which sounds a bit like AMM pools, right? Users contribute tokens. But then it has this dynamic reserve routing. It doesn't just look at its own pools. It scans multiple places, its own reserves and other DXs to find the absolute best price for your swap.
Huh, so it uses AM-style pools for liquidity, but adds a smart layer on top that acts kind of like an aggregator, hunting for the best deal across different venues.
That's the gist. Source 1 highlights it as a way to tap into deeper liquidity and get better price discovery than just relying on its own internal pools, tackling some of those potential AMM liquidity issues.
Clever. Using the simplicity of pools, but adding that wider search for liquidity.
It shows that ongoing effort to refine the decentralized trading experience.
Which brings us to another approach Source 1 discusses, under the heading, The Best of Worlds with Orderly Network. It's framed as a pretty novel idea.
Yeah, Source 1 presents Orderly Network as specifically aiming to fix the shortcomings that make many DEGX feel, well, less performant than CEXs. Things like high latency, maybe clunky user experience, slower speeds, and needing bridges to move assets, which adds complexity.
And it also tries to tackle some of those core DX issues we've talked about, like the lack of limit orders on many AMMs, capital being used inefficiently, slippage, and permanent loss.
Right. Source 1 positions it as a solution provider for these fundamental challenges. The source says orderly strategy is providing unified infrastructure, easy for developers to plug into. Their big goal is an omni-chain central limit order book, CLOB infrastructure.
Okay, so leaning into that familiar CLO model, but making it work across different blockchains and offering it as a base layer for others to build on.
That seems to be the picture Source 1 paints. And it makes some pretty bold claims about the results, according to the source. It says that by working with top market makers, Orderly ensures profound liquidity, tight spreads, and consistent uptime.
Profound liquidity, tight spreads. Those sound like CEX buzzwords.
Exactly. Source 1 actually uses the phrase CEX-like performance and mentions swift transactions. The narrative in the source is that this setup empowers serious traders needing performance and helps devs build superior dApps for a more holistic DeFi trading experience. Source 1 suggests this is paving the way for the next generation of DeFi apps.
So based purely on Source 1, Orderly represents this push to bring the high-performance engine of a centralized order book into DeFi, aiming for that deep liquidity and speed, but within a decentralized context, serving as a foundation for other platforms.
That's the angle presented, trying to merge that C-leg efficiency with decentralized settlement, at least for the final trades.
Okay, wow. We've gone from CEXs through AMMs and order books, touched on hybrids like Kyber, and looked at this infrastructure approach from Orderly Network described in Source 1. Let's tie it all together. Why does knowing all this matter for you, listening right now?
Because knowledge is definitely power here. Understanding these underlying differences helps you choose where to trade more wisely. Are you okay with potentially higher fees for the maximum decentralization of an on-chain order book?
Or do you need speed and low costs, maybe leaning towards an off-chain order book or an efficient AMM, while understanding the different risks involved, like maybe a bit more centralization risk or slippage potential?
Exactly. And if you're just doing simple swaps, an AMM might feel easiest, but if you're thinking of providing liquidity, you need to understand impermanent loss.
Right. Or if you need guaranteed limit orders and depth liquidity for bigger trades, knowing about platforms using performance CLO models, like the one Source 1 describes for Orderly, points you in a different direction.
It helps you see past the interface and understand the engine, letting you manage risks like slippage better and pick tools that fit your strategy and comfort level.
It's clear there's a ton of variety out there. We've seen the centralized model, then the DX world with AMM pools, order books, matching users, hybrids trying to combine them, and infrastructure plays like Orderly Network aiming for CEX performance in DeFi, according to Source 1.
Getting comfortable with these mechanics really is key to navigating the crypto space effectively, I think.
Absolutely. And watching how these platforms keep evolving, borrowing ideas, trying to solve each other's weaknesses, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does the perfect crypto exchange even look like? And you really get the speed, the liquidity, the rock bottom costs of the best CEXs, but keep everything truly decentralized with users always in control, fully transparent.
That's kind of the billion-dollar question, isn't it? That tension between ultimate performance and pure decentralization is what so many teams are still wrestling with.
It's going to be fascinating to see where it all leads. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of crypto exchanges.